Hello, thanks for joining us. Today, in our journey through the Sermon on the Mount, we move into a new section. Well done. We're 24 videos in, and we have 24 videos to go, so we're halfway. Thanks for joining. We have taken 6 months to get 48 verses in, so we're moving at that kind of 2 verses per week glacial pace, and I am loving it. I hope you are too. And like I said, we move into a new section today. So have a look at the image that's on your screen at the moment. This is an illustration of the Sermon on the Mount, the structure of the Sermon on the Mount. So far, we have done the green part, which is the Beatitudes, and then we have done the 3 blue parts, which is an introduction to the antitheses as well as the 6 antitheses. And today we move into the purple section. We're in the middle section of the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to look today at, an introductory verse to that purple section. And so we're going to be in this purple section for the next, 8 weeks. And we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 6, verse 1 to verse 18. And this one's quite easy to see how it all relates to each other, because this is about 3 spiritual practices which are different expressions of righteousness: giving alms to the poor, or giving to the poor, praying, and fasting. And the point that Jesus is making about how these practices should be done. So have a look at the first verse of chapter 6 as a summary of the whole section. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So we are still exploring this idea of righteousness that Jesus has already been talking about in the section that we just finished. Remember, from that section, we learned that righteousness is about treating others rightly, God as our creator, and humans as people who are made in his image. So righteousness is about treating God and people rightly. And Jesus' particular concern in this section is the motivation of our righteous acts. He's concerned particularly about hypocrisy. Now, what is hypocrisy? I don't know if that word hypocrite is in your vocabulary, but I think that for us in Australia, it's the kind of thing that we say about our politicians and our religious leaders. We say that they are hypocrites when they step out of line. So I looked it up in a dictionary. Merriam-Webster says that a hypocrite is a person who puts on a false appearance of virtue or religion. That's the first definition. The second definition is it's a person who acts in contradiction to his or her stated beliefs or feelings. Yes, okay, that sounds familiar. Have a look at what Collins Dictionary says. If you accuse someone of being a hypocrite, you mean that they pretend to have qualities, beliefs, or feelings they did not really have. So this is a person who pretends to be what he or she is not. So for us, a hypocrite is someone who is high on values and stated beliefs, but who doesn't live according to them personally. So, hypocrite, it means for us something to do with doing something that it means seeming to be doing something that you're not doing at all. But Jesus actually, I think his definition of hypocrite is slightly different, because it's not seeming to be doing something you're not doing at all. For Jesus, it means doing something, but doing it for the wrong reasons. Okay, that's the distinction. It is a subtle distinction, but it is very important. Let me give you an example. So for Jesus, a hypocrite isn't just the pastor who tells people that they should give to charity, and then he doesn't do it himself. That's what we would call a hypocrite. And Jesus isn't opposed to that. He thinks that that is wrong as well. He says so many times. But for Jesus, hypocrisy actually goes much deeper than that. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. And so for Jesus, hypocrisy isn't just saying we should give to charity and then not doing it personally. Hypocrisy is also giving to charity, but doing it so that you can be seen to be giving to charity. Hypocrisy for Jesus, it's a higher standard than our definition of hypocrisy. I think it's hard enough to not be a hypocrite according to our definition of a hypocrite, where we come and read what Jesus says about what a hypocrite is, and he even raises the bar a little bit further. Now, here's the thing that I find fascinating about Jesus here. I think for us, we would say things like this: isn't it enough if I'm being generous with my time? Isn't it enough if I'm being generous with my pay packet, my paycheck? Isn't it enough that I am a person who prays, or that I'm someone who turns up to church every weekend? Because I think for us, we tend to think that the behavior itself is enough. But shockingly, I'd say, Jesus doesn't agree. Because Jesus is aware that something that we are still learning. Jesus is aware of something that we are still learning. Even those of us who have been around church and around Christian teaching for a long time, and that is that our hearts are capable of all kinds of evil. Human hearts have made a way to make prayer and fasting and giving to the poor actually not about God or about serving our neighbor. We've found a way to make them about serving ourselves. Now, how have we done that? How have our hearts done that? Well, as Jesus says here, we do those things to receive a social reward, to be thought of as generous or noble or something like that. We can use these things to be self-serving acts that feed our pride when they are intended to be others-serving acts that serve God and our neighbor. Now, there is more that could be said about this principle, but fortunately we're going to spend the next few weeks thinking about what this looks like for our generosity, what this looks like in our prayer, and what this looks like for fasting. But for now, I think we should pray. God, we have been reminded today that faith that is good in your mind is faith that goes all the way down to our hearts. You are not content to have our mere obedience. You want our love and our devotion. And so help us, God, to really be others-oriented in our love, and to ultimately love you in so doing. Amen.